see how this goes today. But first, I want to go and open up with a prayer before we get going. Father, Yahweh, our Creator, our awesome God, we thank you for this day that you brought us together, an appointed time to meet with you, to meet with each other, to fellowship, to praise you, to study, to learn. I pray today that you will bless our time of discussion, that we will hear what you want us to hear, that we will see what you want us to see, that we will take into our hearts your message for us today, Father. It is an honor and a privilege to stand up here, and I just pray that I don't allow any personal opinions or anything else to get in the way, but just to allow you to speak, Father. Thank you for your word, for the truth that it is, for the guidance that it gives our lives. May we realize just how important it is and give it due praise, due honor. May we give it the time that it deserves and give you the time that you deserve. Father, thank you for your love for us, for your continued provision, for your mercies, for your grace that gives us strength. I pray all this in Yeshua's name. Amen. All right, today, kind of a long portion, kind of a lot in it, so we won't cover it all. We might get into chapter 4, when we get part of chapter 4 done. We'll just have to kind of see how it goes. Depends on discussion, depends on time, which speaking of. Jay, you may have to get your clock out later. I don't know.
I got another one running. I got another air conditioner going.
Oh, good.
Maybe it'll start cooling off.
Thank you.
It is a little warm. But thank you all for your flexibility as well. We didn't get a fair warning that, hey, by the way, you need to be in a different room, so we couldn't get it pulled off quick. So we're getting there. Thank you. All right. All right, please do. Mel's going to have a chat tomorrow morning. Get this all straightened out, right, Mel? Just go to town.
You're going to let us use your stuff.
What's that?
Listen here, if you're going to let us use your building, buddy.
Exactly. If you're going to be generous and open your doors to us, by gosh, you better just keep opening doors. We'll keep coming in humbly. Let other people know exactly. All right, Deuteronomy chapter 3. If you remember, you've seen this before, right? Choices. We've talked about this a couple different times. Today, we're going to get a little bit more of that. I'll probably do this fairly often because this is kind of important. I don't know about you, but this is really one that's hitting home with me a lot. What am I choosing? What am I doing? What am I serving? Who am I looking to for guidance, for direction, for whatever? You know, I have to stop every day and I need to look to Him, to His Word, to His Son, to give me direction. So that's, I think, that's where God's working on me this week in particular. And so, therefore, I get to share it all with you guys. So, because my job isn't to stand up here and lecture for an hour or 2 hours and just fill you full of facts and numbers and figures. My job is to generate discussion, hopefully get you thinking. At least that's what I feel my job is. Get us looking at things that maybe we've seen before, maybe haven't seen in the same way. There will probably be some of you who will not like me after today. It's entirely possible, because we're going to talk about idols a little bit later on as we go through into chapter 4, because that's one that I'm very aware of in my life. And so I'm going to share with you and just put some things out there for you guys to think of and think about. Because, frankly, does anyone think there are idols in this world? What are some idols in this world? Money. Big, huge, self.
The love of
The love of.
smartphones.
Position. Smartphones.
Work.
What's that? Cars.
Work.
Sports. Lots of stuff. Work. Oh, it's a big one. Children. Yeah. Grandchildren. Well, hey, wait a minute. those things you mentioned, some of those are in my stuff today and some aren't. And there's a lot of stuff that isn't, so.
Even spouse.
Pets.
Ah, pets. Hey, Phineas isn't your idol.
No.
He's just a cute dog. Okay, so we have to make choices. And your choices, basically, in my humble opinion, tell you where your idols are. We think of idols as temples and statues and all these things that were going on a long, long time ago, right?
I know still can be.
And there still can be, exactly, and still are.
Well, the best way to tell what's important in your life is to look at your checkbook.
Y'all hear that? One of the best ways to tell what's important in your life? Look at your checkbook.
Another is, who are you spending time with?
Who are you spending time with? And we're going to see that here in a little bit. But first, I promised, we're going to start in Deuteronomy chapter 3. Okay. Don't have a whole lot in here except what I try and do, and I hope that you guys do as well, is when you're reading, figure out what's going on, setting the context. Because you can read something, and if you don't have the context, you might really miss what's going on. So, I got an easy question for you. Who's speaking? How do you know?
It says,
Where? Good. And we know from 1:1, these are the words Moses spoke to all Israel in the desert east of the Jordan. Because remember, the Torah portions, God didn't say study this portion, this portion, this portion, this portion. It's not written here. So everything ties together. So one thing that I have to get out of my head was when I'm studying, I like to study 323 to 711. And I'll look at that and look at that. Wait a minute. There's a whole lot of other books to look at. And so tying things together. That's what I've been really working on for me. Okay. Where is he speaking?
east of,
Beth Peor. Again, east of the Jordan, Deuteronomy 1:1. When?
40 years, 38, 39 years, 40 years after.
We have an exact time.
The 11th month.
The 11th month of
The 40th year after they left Egypt.
the 11th month of the 40th year. All these things are given to us.
Approximately 1463 BC.
Well, I don't know if we have that.
All right.
Okay. To whom is he speaking?
Israel.
Second generation, speaking to Israel. Question for you.
And to us.
And to us. Thank you, Fred. Very good. And to us. Is he speaking to the first generation of women? How do we know? Or why do we think that? Go back with me to Numbers.
All of the men who were warriors had died but two that were over 20 when they came out.
Yeah.
But the women and the Levites are still there, and Moses momentarily.
It seems to indicate that. We're going to look at that in just a little bit. Numbers 1, verse 44 and 45. These were the men counted by Moses and Aaron and the 12 leaders of Israel, each one representing his family. All the Israelites 20 years old or more who were able to serve in Israel's army were counted according to their families. The total number was 603,550. By definition that we're given here, these are the Israelites 20 years old or more who were able to serve in Israel's army. So this is males. Exactly. Okay. Numbers 14, and we had a little issue. Numbers 14, verse 26. This is after the rebellion, after they'd gone in and searched out the land and decided, nah, that's not so good. 26. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, how long will this wicked community grumble against me? I have heard the complaints of these grumbling Israelites. So tell them, as surely as I live, declares the Lord, I will do to you the very things I heard you say. In this desert, your bodies will fall. Every one of you, 20 years old or more, who was counted in the census and who has grumbled against me. So is that saying the ones who were counted in the census who also grumbled against him? Or is it saying those who are counted in the census and the ones who grumbled against him? Just a question I've had this week, and I really don't have necessarily an answer for it. Because if you look up above, at the beginning of chapter 14, all the people of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron. So, something to think about. Now, in Deuteronomy, chapter 1,
Hey, Phil?
you,
You know, the only thing that makes me kind of really think that the women were all included, and so like it was the entire population, was if you almost look at how they looked at Balaam and how the women were the source of this influence. So it's like if
the women of Israel were the source of the influence?
well, no, but I'm just saying how he looks at women as a source of influence.
Gotcha.
So that if you were going to
Which kind of fits the pattern.
purge the generation, you would purge the women too, because obviously
Yeah.
they're going to influence the next generation.
Yeah. All right, Numbers 1.
You gotta have somebody taking care of his kids.
Got to have somebody taking care of the kids. Thank you, Eddie. That's a great point.
True.
All right. Deuteronomy 1, down in verse 34. Again, this is kind of, like I said, Moses is kind of recapping things to the second generation. Verse 34, when the Lord heard what you said, he was angry and solemnly swore, not a man of this evil generation shall see the good land I swore to give your forefathers, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh. He will see it, and I will give him and his descendants the land he set his feet on, because he followed the Lord wholeheartedly.
You have to remember too that when the Hebrews talked, if there was just one man and a group of women, it was considered two men.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. And a man, I mean, he was counted, but that was considered his family. He was a man, but it included everything. So, yeah, that's why I'm bringing this up, to kind of, don't just take everything we read and just gloss over it real quick, because it can make you stop and think about things. So, and then in chapter 2, verse 14, so I was hoping I was going to turn that laptop so I could see it, but I can't quite see it. Because then we get the epileptic screen. We don't want to do that. All right, Numbers 2:14. 38 years passed from the time we left Kadesh Barnea until we crossed the Zered Valley. By then, that entire generation of fighting men had perished from the camp, as the Lord had sworn to them. The Lord's hand was against them until he had completely eliminated them from the camp. So you can hear the entire generation of fighting men. But as Leah's pointing out, that also refers to their families as well. As Eddie pointed out, somebody has to take care of the kids. Because their kids have been born over the last 38 years. Kids have grown up. There were 19-year-olds and 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds and so on down the line at the first census that weren't counted, that weren't subject to this punishment. So anyway, just as a little bit of an aside, because something we're going to read over here in chapter 4, I think lends to the idea that maybe there aren't very many left at all, women or anything, from the first generation. So, but then again, there's wording that lends to think maybe there are more than that left. So, anyway, continuing in chapter 3, 27. Where are we here? Back on our page. Because Moses begs, okay, God, and this is just funny to me. Back up in verse 23, verse 24, sorry. O sovereign Lord, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your strong hand. Okay, wait a minute. How long has it been since they left Egypt? How many things has God done for his people in 40 years? And who has seen every single one? Yeah. He's seen every single thing that happened. He spoke face to face. He's seen his glory pass by. But yet here he says, you have begun to show your servant your greatness. So what does that tell you?
He's trying to con God.
Trying to con God?
I
Okay.
think if
we spent our whole life observing God's working, it would just be the beginning.
That's where I'm going with it. That's what it tells me. There's so much happened, but it's just the beginning.
I'm still on the prelude then, my goodness.
What chapter
Yeah.
do we have?
That was in chapter 3. That's verse 24. Sorry, I should have said that. 3:24. O sovereign Lord, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your strong hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do the deeds and mighty works you do? Let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, that fine hill country in Lebanon. So that kind of lends to what Eddie's saying. Oh man, you're so awesome, God. I love you, God. Can I go? You're the best dad ever. Can I go? Please, 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 please let me go to the movie.
Well, in the Jewish Bible, it says the first works.
The
It says
first
things
works.
that begun,
Cool.
It says the first works.
Yeah,
Meaning there's lots more to come.
lots more to come. And there were lots more to come, and there still are lots more to come. And what gets me, when you read in Jeremiah about the second Exodus, this stuff's going to be forgotten. Because it's going to be so much greater. So, wow.
I think what he means right there is because he's lived long enough to see the promise fulfilled. He's gonna get to see the fulfillment of the promise that he gave him from the get-go. You know, I'm gonna bring the people out and bring them into the land flowing with milk and honey. So
That's true.
now it's just begun.
It's just begun. Good point. Yes, Fred.
Well, it says in, to Noah, that they would only get 120 years. Moses had just about got to 120 years. Also, he doesn't want to bring someone into the land that is going to be considered a god.
That's true.
So, and third, he already told Moses he's not going to let him in, so he can't, because he does not lie.
That's right. He does not break his word.
And
Says he
even
doesn't.
though he is a God of mercy, he is also a God of justice. And Moses has lost his right to go.
Yeah, exactly.
At least for the present.
At least for the present, in this physical form
Right.
here.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
He will let you negotiate.
Moses
Will
proved
you
that.
negotiate with him?
Moses proved that.
Just like with Abraham, 50-40 kids.
True.
Moses is trying to sweetheart.
But the only thing is that he has made a definite statement that he's not going, so he does not, when he makes a definite statement,
Right.
there's no argument anymore.
Not at all. Ed?
Shadows, images, and pictures, and lessons we learned from. A lady called on the phone and asked and said, are there any Moseses today that will not be able to go into the land or heaven?
Different time.
Thank you, dear. She does it again, love you.
That darn truth thing just gets in the way sometimes, huh?
She would also add, dear, immoral people, liars, going into heaven won't be allowed. They're not of Moses, but they will, let's just say the Jerusalem proper, temple area proper. Okay.
Revelation 21:8.
Yes, that's, they would have begun to keep it.
Right.
Scary list.
Yeah, that list, if you haven't read Revelation 21:8, who doesn't get in, that's a scary list, because you know what? I can check a lot of those boxes in my days.
Mhm.
And probably today, and maybe even yesterday. Especially, it's exactly what it implies. Idolaters, liars, cowards.
Ooh, scary.
Starts with cowards.
Last night on the program, I forget what the name of that program is on GLC, where they're doing on homosexual. And one of her questions to her guest was, will there be homosexuals in heaven? And he went to that verse and he said, it says that they won't do that anymore. Not meaning that there won't be liars and there won't be homosexuals in heaven, but people who, they won't do that anymore. They used to do that, but they don't do it anymore. So that doesn't really mean that there won't be those people in heaven. It just means that the ones who, that are there used to do that, but they don't do that anymore.
Well, yeah, because otherwise it wouldn't be very
You
popular.
know, that was what he was saying.
there wouldn't be much of a population if you could never have done any of that stuff.
Right.
Right.
The basic message of the gospel itself, and even the Torah that we see, is repent. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. And so, if you have Moses imploring the people to turn around and keep the Torah, that's exactly what he should have said in the Gospels. But he should have said it succinctly.
Right.
It's the exact same thing. So, I mean, the message is the exact same. You know, there's not really a difference there.
No, not at all.
And repent means to turn away from and not do anymore.
And go back to the beginning,
Right.
get back on the right path. Which I wanted to bring up here, something we didn't really talk about in Numbers 27, 22 is kind of the story of Joshua being commissioned to succeed Moses. And something that, when I was looking at that a few weeks ago, that popped in my head is, well, Joshua is type and shadow of,
Yeshua.
by name, if nothing else, right? Yehoshua, Jehovah saved. And what's interesting is noon, perpetuity. God saves forever. And if you think about it, in the way my mind works, trying to understand what Paul talks about. By the way, flip over to go to Romans chapter 7 real quick. And then we're going to jump around a little bit, and then we'll come back and then we'll jump around.
While you're turning pages, Donnie, can you give me an idea, is there some significance to the sense of perpetuity in that there's a nun, vav the connector, and a nun, soffit? So it's like from continuum to continuum, is there a picture of continuity, or?
It's like, the nude, the word picture is life. So it's life connected to life, connected to life, in perpetuity. That's why they stress that point. It's going, but it's all about life.
And that's what those who love God, do the will of God, will inherit eternal life. Yeah. Okay, Romans chapter 7. Just something I want to point out real quick that my lovely bride all of a sudden hit one night when we were studying at our house on Wednesday night. Do you ever have trouble understanding Paul, or does family members, do people you know at work, like, what in the heck is Paul talking about? I don't get it. He sounds schizophrenic. He sounds like he's crazy. He flip-flops all over the place, right? Sounds like. Romans 7, verse 1. I think this pretty well says why. Do you not know, brothers, for I'm speaking to men who know the law. If you don't know much about the law, are you going to understand what Paul's saying?
Nope.
I mean, I didn't used to at all have a clue. Thought, well, whatever the preacher says, the teacher says, the author says, the whatever says, they must know because they've spent more time studying Paul. They must understand him better. Well, getting into Hebrew roots movement and actually going back and reading Genesis through Deuteronomy, along with prophets and things, all of a sudden, I don't know about you, but I started seeing things in Paul's writings that made sense all of a sudden. Because that's who he's talking to.
Even Peter says, what Paul says now.
Yeah,
I
Peter
can
says,
understand. Here's Peter, who spent years with Yeshua and saying
Uh-huh.
Paul is speaking things that are hard to understand. So,
because who was Paul? Apostle before that. Pharisee and rabbi. I mean, he knew this side of the book really, really, really good. Because that's one side of the book he had, FYI. So he knew that. So, what I wanted to do was do a quick little look at Galatians chapter 3. So, when you think about Paul, think about that statement there. Do you not know, brothers, for I'm speaking to men who know the law? It'll give you a clue as to what he's talking about and where to find some of the answers. All right, Galatians 3, and specifically that whole passage there, 15 to 29, in the NIV is titled The Law and the Promise, but I want to look at specifically let's do
While you're doing
Verse
that,
21.
let me add something to you.
yes, sir. Go right ahead.
In Galatians 5, behold, I testify again to every man that is circumcised, that he is a debtor to do the whole law. Christ is become of no effect unto you. Whosoever of you are justified by the law, ye are fallen from grace.
Yep. Exactly. And the key word you said there is the justified by the law. We're going to talk about that in a minute. All right. Galatians 3, let's go to 19. What then was the purpose of the law? And one thing to think about when you're reading Paul is he does what seems like flip-flops. Think of it as two sides of the same coin. He's saying two different statements talking about the same thing. Because he's talking to somebody and he's talking about somebody else to those people. So just keep that in mind. A lot of times in what he's writing. Could be. Because he knows both. He knows all that stuff. So, all right, verse 19. What then was the purpose of the law? It was added because of transgressions until the seed to whom the promise referred to come. The law was put into effect through angels by a mediator. A mediator, however, does not represent just one party, but God is one. Is the law therefore opposed to the promises of God? Absolutely not. For if a law had been given that could impart life, then righteousness would certainly have come by the law. But the Scripture declares that the whole world is a prisoner of sin, so that what was promised, being given through faith in Yeshua, might be given to those who believe. Before this faith came, we were held prisoners by the law, locked up until faith should be revealed. So the law was put in charge to lead us to Christ, that we might be justified by faith. Now that faith has come, we are no longer under the supervision of the law. That's one that, I don't know about you, but I've heard from people often. What does it mean? Oh, we don't do the law anymore, because that's what it says, right?
At the very beginning of it, that's what it sounds like.
That's
It
what
says it was until Jesus came.
That's right. But what does it mean? Specifically in verse 24, put in charge to lead us to Christ. I'm going to parallel that with the verse listed up there. Well, Romans 10:4, Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to those who believe, right?
But
Same
end
thing.
means aim.
End means aim. And put in charge is to guide, to bring to. Like, it's a schoolmaster, a pedagogue, I think is the Greek word, pedagogos, or something along those lines. But it's to lead you to the teacher who's going to really show you what to do. And if you think about it, in this context of Moses and Joshua, Moses and Yeshua. Moses, one question, the Israelites in the desert, how much of the Torah did they keep?
What?
How much of the Torah did the Israelites keep in the desert while they were wandering for 38 years?
How much Torah did they keep?
How much did they keep? The whole Torah?
The Ten Commandments, I would think, for sure.
I would think, yeah, probably.
But the rest were for when they got into the promise.
Exactly. They received the instruction over and over, probably every week, maybe more than that, because they didn't have they didn't go to work at 7-Eleven during the week and just come to Shabbat on Saturday, right? They're all together all the time, kind of a thing. Although we really don't know exactly what went on those 30 years, because we kind of have a big break.
Well, the Shema says to do it when you rise up and when you lie down and when you're on the road. So I think they did it a lot, every day.
Turn the screensaver off and everything.
Well, also, they had someone on GLC one time that got up there and started saying that what a lot of people, you've got to read the whole book that, the whole letter that Paul wrote, because he argues on a Greek style of arguing in that when he's arguing with someone who's pushing a certain point of view, he